Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to first of all wish you and all the House a very happy New Year. And, Mr. Speaker, I would ask this question to ask the Prime Minister if she will make a statement on progress made in achieving legal changes to the EU withdrawal agreement and the timetable in this House for a meaningful vote.
For exiting the European Union. Secretary Stephen Barclay.
I'm sure in a tone that will reflect the year ahead, may I join in agreeing with the Leader of the Opposition and wishing you and colleagues across the House a Happy New Year at the start of the year. Mr. Speaker, as the House will be aware, the Prime Minister today launched a new 10-year plan for the NHS, allocating an extra £20.5 billion a year in funding. And so I am therefore responding on her behalf to the question. I'm sure colleagues across the House recognise the importance of the NHS plan. As confirmed by the Leader of the House in a business statement before the Christmas recess, this Wednesday the House will debate a business motion relating to Section 13(1)(b) of the European Union Withdrawal Act 2018. This will then be followed by the main debate on Section 13(1)(b), which will continue on Thursday the 10th of January and subject to the will of the House on Friday the 11th. Discussions are taking place through the usual channels as to the proposed length of that debate and indeed the date of that vote. But ultimately it will be a decision for this House through the business motion which will be voted on this Wednesday. Debate will also take place in the House of Lords on Wednesday the 9th, Thursday the 10th and Monday the 14th. Mr. Speaker, the decision to postpone the debate last year was not one that was taken lightly. Over the 2 years of negotiations, the Prime Minister won hard-fought battles. Most importantly, to agree a bespoke deal rather than the flawed off-the-shelf options initially offered. But it was clear from the 3 days of debate that were held in this House that it was not going to pass the deal and that further reassurances should be sought, particularly on the issue of the backstop. Following the European Council in December, a series of conclusions were published which go further than the EU has ever done previously in trying to address the concerns of this House. Over Christmas, the Prime Minister has been in contact with a number of her European counterparts about the further legal and political assurances that Parliament need on the backstop. And my right honourable friend has been in touch with the Taoiseach, and indeed British and Irish government officials have also been in contact over the last week. Securing the additional reassurance that Parliament needs remains our priority, and leaders remain in contact. Leaving the EU with the deal that has been agreed is in the interests of both sides. Mr. Speaker, when the debate begins on Wednesday, the Government will be clear with the House what has been achieved since the vote was deferred last year. As I said when I spoke in the debate on the 4th of December, the deal will enable us to deliver a fair, skills-based immigration system, control over our fisheries policy and our agricultural policies, our trade, well, not unlike the SNP who want to remain in the European approach, our own trade policy for the first time for more than 3 decades, and an ending to sending vast sums of money to the EU. Mr. Speaker, it is a good deal, it's the only deal, and I believe it is the right deal in offering certainty for this country.
Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank you for granting this urgent question today. With less than 3 months until we reach the Article 50 deadline, there can be no more hiding and no more running away. This issue will define Britain's future and should not be decided by the internal machinations of the Conservative Party. This House and this country deserve much better. A month ago, the Prime Minister shamefully pulled the meaningful vote, promising to do everything possible to secure assurances from the EU on the temporary nature of the backstop. Now the time has come for the Prime Minister to tell the House exactly what legal assurances have been given by EU leaders. She achieved nothing at the December summit, and now surely she has plenty to update us on. And whilst I'm delighted to see the Brexit Secretary here, it's the Prime Minister who should be here to answer these questions. The Prime Minister suggested a breakthrough had been secured last week, and the issue, Mr. Speaker, is that she's not here because she's busy promoting Project Fear. It's all hot air. There seems to be confusion over exactly what the Prime Minister is demanding from the EU. The Leader of the House promised legal reassurances. Yesterday, the Prime Minister told the BBC we're not asking for anything new. So can the Secretary of State clear this up and tell the House exactly what is being requested? This morning, ministers in his own department didn't seem to have a clue. When asked what the PM was demanding, the Brexit minister had to concede he didn't know. But he reassured the whole world by saying that he was an important person. So that's all right. Mr. Speaker, I fear the reason why so many of her cabinet are in the dark is because there is nothing to know. And if this is the case, what guarantees do we have from the Secretary of State that, faced with yet another humiliating defeat, the Prime Minister won't just run away? Can the Secretary of State do what the Prime Minister should be doing today and confirm the timetable for the vote, the meaningful vote, and provide what we've not received before, a cast-iron promise this will not be reneged on yet again? The government is trying to run down the clock in an attempt to blackmail this House and the country into supporting a botched deal. She's refused to work with the majority in the last few months in a desperate attempt to spark life into what is actually a Frankenstein monster of a deal. We're now told if we don't support it, the government is prepared to push our whole economy off a cliff edge. And to prove this, no deal preparations are underway. The Transport Secretary, who has, a PhD in incompetency in running ministries, has awarded a shipping contract to a company that doesn't have any ships. And even today, we see the farce of lorries being lined up to stage a fake traffic jam in Kent to pretend to the EU that the government is ready for a no deal. A stunt that the Road Haulage Association described as window dressing, and one of the drivers described as a complete waste of time. The government is fooling nobody. These shambolic preparations are too little too late. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, there is no majority in this House to support no deal. Why won't the government face up to this truth and stop wasting our time and our money? The Prime Minister should be here updating MPs on what progress she has achieved, if any. Instead, she's continuing her approach as before Christmas of ducking scrutiny and dodging accountability. We will hold this government to account for their incompetence.
Well, Mr. Speaker, based on the lack of consent in that, it's good to know the Leader of the Opposition had a good break over Christmas. He said about colleagues not knowing. What they don't know is what Labour's plan is. But what they do know, it is one riddled with contradiction. Labour say that they want to remain in a customs union, and yet they also say that they intend to have an independent trade policy, even though the EU have made it clear that that is an area of EU competence. They say that they want to be in the internal market, but at the same time end free movement, even though the two are contradictory. The Shadow Business Secretary says that he doesn't want to rule out the option of a second referendum, and yet the Shadow Education Secretary says that will be a betrayal of the democracy of the main referendum vote. They had a manifesto that said on page 24 that they were going to respect the referendum result. Now they seem to have a policy which is to go back on it. So the confusion that we have is as to what the Honourable Gentleman, actually believes, which is why he started by saying that we couldn't stop Brexit. In past interviews he says we couldn't stop it, and yet his Shadow Secretary says that they can. I'm pleased he started his remarks, Mr. Speaker, by seeming to upgrade me. Last time my role was purely ceremonial. Now he seems to welcome me to my post, and yet seems to suggest that the NHS 10-year plan, an extra £20.5 billion of investment into our NHS, is in some way Project Fear. Well, we're used to Project Fear on the NHS. It is a Project Fear we see from the benches opposite on a regular basis. The reality, Mr. Speaker, is that he opposes the preparation for no deal, which any responsible government needs to make, whilst at the same time saying that he will vote against the deal. It is that internal machination in the Labour Party that he needs to address, and is that there was nothing in his contribution to the House today that he sought to clarify. It is time that he now came clear. Does the Leader of the Opposition maintain the position in the manifesto that they are going to respect the referendum result, or does he agree with his Shadow Secretary and want a second referendum?
Mr. Kenneth Clark.